Hello and welcome to episode 268 of the Small and Supercharged podcast with Ria Freeman. Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Small and Supercharged podcast. It's a solo. I know we've been hanging out a lot recently, but I want to tell you why. I know I've said before I've been super busy. As you know, I'm working on my second book at the moment, which is, I don't want to blow my own trumpet at all, but I'm so excited about it. It is going to be awesome. But part of that is I'm doing a huge amount of interviews with people for different things. And I'll absolutely level with you. I am really time poor. I've been really time poor the last few weeks, months to get out there and source interviews. I've got some in the bag that are coming through. I've got some amazing ones booked, which I cannot wait to share with you. But I'll level with you. I am being consistent by showing up and speaking to you, but I have dropped the ball on the other interviews beyond the ones that I am doing for the book at the moment. Now I'm hoping to rectify that really soon. I've been thinking about, should I pause the podcast and have seasons? What should I do? And I've actually in the last hour changed my mind. And I think if it's okay with you, and I'd be really keen to hear your feedback. I'm going to grit my teeth and we're going to get through this challenging time. And I'll tell you for why. Because this is mid-October now. I have got some interviews booked in for the podcast in the next few weeks, which are going to be awesome interviews. And then we're going to have, a Christmas push, a little series with people in the mastermind group, which is always really good fun. And that's something that I want to do. It's a great way for them to promote their businesses. I love the mastermind crew and I want to make sure that we do that. And therefore, I don't feel that pausing is going to be like 2 weeks, which is not really the point of this. So we are going to battle through. We are going to try our best. But if you are listening to this and you think, well, I'd love to be a guest, pitch me. I am throwing down the gauntlet to you. I should say I get a lot of pitches. Quite literally every day I receive pitches from people who have never listened to the podcast. One actually called me the wrong name the other day, like the wrong name of the podcast. Not a minor thing, like a completely different podcast. And one I really loved was I had an email from somebody and it started off quite well. They got the right podcast name. They got the right podcast name. They said that their client was a big fan of the podcast. It went quite well and I thought, oh, interesting. Then I noticed they'd actually sent me another email from another client and it was word for word the same. Word for word, which I thought, yeah, so you're going on the delete pile, because I can't imagine that two clients think exactly the same about the podcast. Word for word, people. If you are using a podcast booking agent, for the love of God, please make sure they do some research, because I will just delete it. I get so many requests and I just look and I think, absolutely not. I am not letting you loose in the ears of my lovely listeners. So I'm saying to you, if you are listening to this now and you have got something that you want to share, if you've got some value to bring to the Small and Supercharged audience, tell me. Send me an email. I'm ria@riafreemanpr.co.uk. There is a podcast about what makes a good podcast pitch. I would urge you to listen to that. I know that we talk about this with Flo Carter. She pitched me a really great pitch on the back of the podcast about how to pitch for a podcast. It was, oh God, maybe I need to do a refresh on this. It was January the 27th, 2021. So you do need to go back a little bit in time, but it's all about how to pitch yourself to be on a podcast, because I want to bring amazing interviews to everyone that listens to this podcast, which is a growing audience. And I want to make sure I am bringing them value. I'm bringing them stories that are useful, inspiration, all of these things. And for that, there needs to be really good stories. There needs to be people who have got something to share, who have got some value to bring. This does not mean you need to be a global megastar. If you are, you're very welcome. but it means you need to know the podcast, know the audience. What stuff have you listened to and thought, I've got a take on that. I have had that issue. I have learned to do that. Maybe you are amazing on TikTok and you want to share some knowledge with people about how you grow a TikTok account. Maybe you have overcome issues that you want to talk about that you think are going to be relevant to the audience. I'm not going to say I'm going to accept every pitch, because although I am really, really keen to have amazing people on, they do have to be amazing people with amazing stories to tell. Don't count yourself out already. Don't think, well, I won't be interesting. Do the work, listen to the podcast. It basically gives you a step-by-step guide of how to feature on any podcast, but also mine. And I'd be really keen to hear from you. So do have a listen to that. And if you think, you know what, I'm in for this, it might be some of the podcasts I've got kind of recording will probably go out very early next year, based on how the schedule's all looking with all the Christmas stuff. But now I'm opening this opportunity to you. Talk to me about what makes you different, what makes you unique and special, what you've learned and what value that brings to the audience, and know the audience too. But today we are going to talk about in praise of criticism, and I'll tell you for why. So over the last, few months, I've been away a few times to different places for different reasons, and some have been really great and some places have left a lot to be desired. And what is annoying, and these are like hotels, these kind of venues, what's annoying is that one place I went fairly recently was absolutely stunning. It was a beautiful, beautiful place. It was a beautiful location. And it had all the ingredients to be an absolute top level hotel, an amazing experience. But it was missing a lot of details, and not expensive details here. Things that I think when we're close to stuff we don't necessarily see. We can all look at what someone else is doing and see perhaps ways of improving, because we are looking at it from a different viewpoint and we are slightly further away, which makes it easier to critique essentially. Now, I know there are two kind of quite distinctive types of criticism. There is constructive criticism. This is that helpful criticism where you are looking at a situation and it's essentially feedback. It's feedback that perhaps isn't positive, I think. Although, to be fair, the way it's delivered can be a real game changer. So it's I won't say negative feedback, but again, that can sound very negative, obviously. But constructive criticism, constructive feedback is a way of building and improving and developing. And it's really, really valuable. One example of this is in Mastermind every month. I critique one person's social media account. So it's usually Facebook or Instagram. And I go through it and I talk about things that I would do differently, or things based on best practices or areas to look at and review. Now, whilst these are criticisms in one way, because I'm saying, oh, that's the thing, what I'm very aware of doing, because it's how I operate. I wouldn't outwardly criticise someone who was trying their best if they were asking for help, because that's not okay. But I'm saying, yeah, I see what you've tried to do there. Have you thought about this? Or this is the best practice for this situation, or this kind of thing works better. So I'm using my knowledge to do that. So I think that's a very positive way of essentially criticism, but it is constructive. It is constructive feedback, a critique. Constructive criticism, constructive critiques, constructive feedback can help you to develop what you're doing. It can help you to take stuff to the next step. It can help you to improve well beyond what you expected. It helps you to see a different perspective as well, because if we are so close to what we're doing, it's very challenging to see it from a different perspective. So thinking about the book that I'm working on at the moment, I will get this read by at least 2, maybe 3 different people before it even goes to Bloomsbury. And and I will read it through many times as well. But I can read stuff, and I can read words that aren't perhaps there, or I know what I mean, and therefore something makes complete sense. If someone who isn't me reads it, they will read what is there. And if I am talking about something because I know the subject deeply, and therefore I'm maybe not explaining it well, it will be picked up. So whilst that is criticism, it is very constructive because I can amend it and improve it, and that allows me to go on and do better things. So having that different perspective is useful from that point of view. Having a different perspective on this from a social media point of view, from a business point of view, is super, super useful. And I've also realised how useful it is with things like hotels. It also helps you to move beyond your own experiences and your own frames of reference. If you have only ever known something a certain way, it can be very difficult to think about what might be possible and extend beyond your scope that you already know about. And that's another reason why feedback can be so, so useful. Now, I was trying to think of examples, and obviously I've talked about the social media critique, and I'm going to talk about one of the hotels I've stayed in a few months ago as well. I'm not going to name names because actually it's a brilliant, brilliant place. It's lovely. But I think as well, I go into places, I'm always looking at ways to improve. I don't know why. I think it's like a hardwired thing at this point in the game. I do it with my own work as well all the time. And it was lovely. It was a beautiful place. The food was exceptional. The room was lovely. It was on paper really, really good. However, if you kind of think about it in more of a critical point of view way, you start to think, well, could anything have been better? And it could have been. So little things like it was very difficult to find a member of staff when we got there to book into the room. Really difficult. The reception was closed, although the signage didn't allow us to find the reception, which was challenging. Then we went into the main building and there was nobody there. Went into the bar, there was nobody there. It was very difficult to find somebody, which wasn't an amazing start, but fine. When we got in, there was a welcome letter, lovely touch, absolutely loved the welcome letter. However, the welcome letter talked about that there was a thing of treats in a chest at the bottom of the bed, which also had a map in of some of the walks around the place. So I thought, oh, awesome. Well, so I went off to find the map. There was no treats, and there wasn't a chest at the bottom of the bed. So it took me quite a long time to find the map, and actually the map was next to the welcome letter, but the map was on the back of like a big, God, how big is that? A2 pamphlet that sort of opened up. And this is a funny thing as well, because I didn't expect any treats. I didn't have any ambition for any treats. But when you're told it's there, you instantly feel quite disappointed by that, which is bizarre. So perhaps making sure that the welcome letter is in relation to that room and what that person is doing. Not a big thing, but a thing all the same. The welcome procedure was definitely lacking a little bit. When we went through for dinner, which was again lovely, you had water glasses on the table, but no water. You had wine glasses, but no wine list. These aren't big things. These aren't the kind of things you think, oh, I'm never going back there again. Far from it. But just these little things that if you were looking at something really critically with scope to improve, because we can all improve what we're doing, we can all up-level ourselves. Actually, having the wine list on the table would have made it much easier to sell wine. It had wine glasses. There was no wine list. So therefore, how can you, if someone says, would you like a drink? You think, I've no idea what wine's available. I was quite happy with my drink anyway, but it's, again, that's a good opportunity to upsell and to add more money into the system, because you are actively selling a product to people or actively telling them what's available. Because on some bump connected to the place we were staying, they were talking about their amazing wine list and this and this. Wasn't anywhere to be seen. No idea what they had. So it's just a little thing like that, these little things that can make a massive difference. And it's not a game changer at all, but it helps to take you to the next level. It makes you a really incredible place to spend time, or it makes your business just next level. You deliver a next level of customer service. And it can be very difficult to critically review our own work. We can to a degree, but to take it to that next level, which is what we should all be striving for. We should be looking at these ways to improve. And often it's not expensive things that make the difference. It's the handwritten note in a parcel that people feel like you really, really care. It's having your name on the handwritten note rather than something impersonal. It's getting back to people quickly if they've got a query or a problem. It's not always the big things. Actually, the little things can make a massive, massive difference. But now when you think about how we gather this information in, because it is vulnerable, it's really vulnerable. You're saying to people, tell me what's wrong. And one would argue that's definitely opening the floodgates, and people will tell you if there's something wrong. And I would say people will tell you if something is horribly wrong and they're really, really cross. But, well, they may do, but also what will happen is they won't come again, or they won't use your product or service again. They're going to tell you that. But if it's a minor thing, if it's a kind of thing that just is kind of a niggle or a query or a question, then it might not be something they'd write to them about. The things I've talked to you about today are not things I would necessarily write to anybody about, because it's not a game changer. It's not like we had an awful time and I'm looking for a refund, because that's absolutely not the case. We had a lovely time. But would it mean that I would go there again, or would it mean I would look for other possible options at places to stay? Probably that. And that's not because it was bad, but it doesn't make me think it's the most perfect place in the world, which is kind of what I think we're looking for. We do look for perfection. We look for going somewhere that's super, super special. So I think asking for feedback is actually a really good way of helping to guarantee people come back. It shows that you care. It can help to increase reduce your turnover of new customers by adding more people to it. The churn rate isn't so large. You're getting people to come back time and again. You're making them your friends, your connections. You're developing that relationship more, so people feel it more. So how do we ask for this? Now, you can go all out and you can ask all of your customers. You can ask them to send their feedback, and often you'll get, forms, things like, the TripAdvisors, the FIFOs, there's other ones, other kind of reviews that you can give. That's a good thing. That's a useful thing. People will give reviews. I think, the only reviews I leave Amazon reviews. I do leave Amazon reviews, and they are usually very positive, because if not, I'll tend to send it back. But that is a good place to start. You can ask people for testimonials. You can ask them to send their thoughts in words. That's good. You can send them questionnaires. You could use different software like SurveyMonkey or other ones like that allow you to do questionnaires. You could probably use a Google Doc, would probably do a questionnaire. You could even do like polls, I guess. Think about the questions you want to ask though. You want them to be open-ended but structured, in terms of you want to perhaps go through a process. How was the ordering service? How was this? How was this? How was this? Encourage people to share. What would they improve? Ask them that question. What would work better for them? Now, it might be stuff that you cannot do, stuff that is well beyond your budget, your scope, or what you even think is useful. But if there's simple changes that you could do that would not cost you anything or much, a lot of the time these things won't cost you anything. Or if you start to see recurring patterns and themes, that could be something to think about a little bit more. Another thing you could do, and I've been asked to one of these before a couple of years ago, and I really enjoyed it, but it's quite an interesting one, and that's a focus group. So I was asked to be on a focus group for a service, quite a big service for entrepreneurs, and I was asked to be part of this focus group. I'll be honest, I'm not sure how many people were on it. I feel like I want to say 10, 12, something like that. Not loads and loads of people. And it was really good because, we did get to share our opinions and we were asked specific questions on specific things. The only thing I would say on this is that if you are in the focus group, try really hard not to get defensive. we can feel like it's a personal attack, and it isn't. But if you are the business particularly, it can feel very, very personal. So in that case, it might not be best if you do the focus group. It might be best to have someone else run it and you maybe collate it. Get a collated version of the outcomes. But if you can do it without being defensive, the feedback you'll get will be invaluable. And beyond that, people will really feel like you care and that you're interested. You could also phone people if they're happy, if they agree, obviously. You can have chats face to face. If you are likely to get offended or get defensive, though, I'd probably slightly move away from that, because it can feel like you're being attacked, and that's not what you want. You don't want this potentially positive opportunity for growth, development and change to become something that your customers or potential customers feel that you're very combative on, because that's not how we get genuine good feedback. Another thing you can do as well is you can approach something similar as a consumer rather than as a business owner. So if, for example, you have let's go hotel. If you have a hotel, where is the harm in booking a night away in another hotel, similar level to yours, similar kind of target audience, perhaps in a different location, somewhere different in the country, so it's not a direct competitor, and going and just almost yourself critiquing what they are doing and what they could be doing better, and also what they are doing well and how you could apply that to what you're doing. This could be the same if you're a retail customer, a company. Be a retail customer and order from a different business and look at their process. You might order from a large business, how do they manage it? A smaller business, how do they manage it? And it could be that you find from the larger business their tracking is exceptional. You get text messages at different stages and that is really good and you really like that. But the smaller business might put more effort into it. They might write the handwritten cards. They might pack things beautifully with tissue paper and stickers, and you'll love that. Look at what you can learn from others. Critically review what they're doing and see what things you really like you could implement into your own business, your own way of doing things. There are loads of ways we can get our own feedback on what we do, and we can go beyond our normal frame of reference, which is usually our businesses, and find out more about what's really, really good and what's making people tick. And I'd really urge you to do that. So I hope that has been useful. I'd love your thoughts on this. How do you take constructive criticism? It's hard. I'll level with you. It is not easy. I have to say, I do actively go out and seek it. I try and always ask a lot of questions. At the end of coaching calls, they will say, have you found that helpful? What could have been, I try and say, could that be more helpful? What would have worked better for you? As I'm going along, I'm continually assessing. When I've done projects for people, I will ask for feedback. I will say what went well, what's the feedback from people, what could we do better, what could we improve. I will, if someone says X and I'm like, that's absolutely wrong, this could have happened and it didn't, and I can say, well, it did, if obviously that is the case. But also I say, yeah, that's a fair point, that could have been better, this was the reasons behind that thought process this time, but yeah, that makes sense. Or even sometimes, no, that doesn't make any sense at all. What's the objective to that particular strategy? And that's fine too. You don't have to accept all this constructive criticism as actually constructive. It might make sense in one person's world, but in practical terms, it makes no sense. And that's fine too. Some bits of feedback we get from people kind of should be discarded. We have this in our day-to-day lives. You've got to be selective who you take this from. But it can be hugely powerful and hugely useful. I hope that has been helpful for you. I'd love your thoughts on this. How do you take constructive criticism? Do you ask for feedback? Do you ask for constructive feedback? How do you like to give feedback? How do you like to receive it? And as I mentioned at some point today in the podcast, the social media critiques we do in Mastermind are blooming awesome. And if you would like to know more about Mastermind, just head on over to riafreemanpr.co.uk. And at the very top, there is the Mastermind tab. And yeah, all the information is on there. or any questions, of course, do send me an email and I will do my best to answer them. And if you are listening and you are still mulling over in your head that you might like to pitch to be on the podcast, do the work, do the research, and I am looking forward to hearing from you. Take care, everyone. I have loved chatting to you, and we'll catch up really, really soon. Take care.